22, 21, excuse me. 1 Samuel 21, and here's my dilemma again, is chapters 21 and 22 are very related. Like, I wanted to cover both chapters today. And the way it lays out, there are certain things we're going to see here in a moment that help us understand what else goes on in chapter 21, but it's really important for what happens in chapter 22. But there isn't time to cover everything we need to cover of 21 and 22 in 1 week. All right, so I'm just warning you right now. Today, actually, I almost don't want to say it, might be a little short. Who's Shirley? And and it's because there are some things here that really build to 22. But don't worry, whatever I let you off early today, I'll make up for next week, because it's some really good stuff. So let's just get started. And we'll start kind of slow, and then we'll ramp it up and read this. So I want to start with verse 1 of 1 Samuel 21. You all know where we're at in the story? All right. For those that have not been with us, Saul is king because the Israelites demanded a king. He has not followed the Lord. He has resisted the Lord. Everything is about his own pride. He's willing to give up everything for his throne, including his daughter, his son. He tried to kill Jonathan. Like, he is full of pride. And so God has turned his eyes away from him and had David anointed as king. He's not king yet, but he's anointed to be the next king. And after that, David killed Goliath, was brought in, became a commander in the army, has done nothing but good for Israel and for Saul. He has built Saul's name, and we're going to see that. Or everybody says, "Why are you against David? He supports you." And yet Saul has tried to kill David 3 times with his own spear. He sent assassins to go kill David when, they got into town and all they could do was prophesy, and kind of a fun story. And so Jonathan wouldn't, last week we looked at Jonathan wouldn't believe that his dad still wanted him dead. I talked to him. He says, "We're good." David said, "He's not telling you. I'm telling you, he wants me dead." So they did their little test, and that lands us with David having to flee for his life. And that's where we're at in the story. So David went to Nob, to Ahimelech, the priest. Ahimelech trembled when he met him and asked, "Why are you alone? Why is no one with you?" So here's the arrival. And I want to just talk about it for a minute. Somehow, David has gone to the priest. We're going to see it's at the tabernacle. And where's the tabernacle? It's easy. Read verse 1. Where's the tabernacle? Nob. It's in Nob. Where was it last time? I mean, we've seen it in Shiloh, and then Kiriath Jearim or Ebenezer. Now it's in Nob. It's kind of getting moved around, and that's not the big story here. The big story to me is that David felt compelled, when he had to run for his life, to go to the tabernacle. His first move is into the presence of God. And if we would make that our first response, what a big difference life would be for us. Now, it doesn't say it much here, and I probably listen to 7 or 8 sermons. Even after I do my own study, I listen to see if I'm missing something or get other perspectives. And a lot of them really look down at David for what he does here, and he makes some mistakes. But I just want to point out that he did go to where, and even though it's not going to say it here at this time, when it reflects back to this, I think you'll see that David had a desire to go there to inquire of the Lord. It doesn't say it here, but we'll see it next week in chapter 22. That's what I'm saying. It's so interrelated. Well, sneak peek. Look at 22:14. Ahimelech answered the king. So Saul comes looking for David because he hears that Ahimelech had helped. Ahimelech answered the king, "Who of all your servants is as loyal as David, the king's son-in-law, captain of your bodyguard, and highly respected in your household?" So already, I mean, how did the people feel about David? They liked him, but not only that, how did they view David treated Saul? Very respectful. Like, he's your family. Like, we don't hear. It goes on. Now watch this. Was that day the first time I inquired of God for him? So it doesn't say that David came to inquire of the Lord over here in chapter 21. But what does Ahimelech say? This was not the first time that David has come to me to inquire of the Lord. That tells me two things. Number one, why did he go to the tabernacle in 21:1? To inquire of the Lord. What else does it tell us? It's not his first time going there. Like, this is his habit. It's a natural instinct. It is a natural instinct. And we're going to see here in a moment in chapter 21 when Ahimelech asks David questions in order to give him some bread. David answers them almost sarcastically, not really, but almost, where he's like, well, we always do this. Like, of course. I wouldn't ask you for the bread if we weren't clean. You know what I'm saying? So I get from just the fact that he's there and from reading these chapters that David, part of the point of this is that David is compelled to be near God and to let God lead. However, just like us, we know God exists, we believe God exists, we believe He's powerful, so what do? We take matters into our own hands. You would think that we'd be smarter than that and say, you know, okay, well then God, you take it. But no, it's like, okay, God, I know you could fix it, but let me do this one. And we're going to start to see that with David. It also says in verse 1, it's the reason I only read one verse, there's so much happening, I want to get to it to set the stage. It says Ahimelech trembled. Why would he tremble? Does he tremble every time David comes? Probably not. Something's different this time. What do you think is making him tremble? Because he's alone. Now that's good. I want you reading ahead. It's because he's alone, but we're going to see, I think there's more to it than that. We're going to see this guy named Doeg. And I'm just preparing you to, when we read it here in a minute, for you to go, now I see what's happening. Doeg is a servant of Saul who happens to be there. And Doeg, in next week's lesson, plays a very serious role as the rat. Okay? He is a rat. And so I think it wasn't just that David was alone, but usually when David showed up to inquire of the Lord, he had his men with him that all were wanting to inquire of the Lord. David influenced other people to put God first. And when he saw David by himself, maybe some of the rumors that Saul is out for blood for David, and I got this guy right there. You know, yes, Jeff.
Is he alone? Because the priest says, are the young men with you? At least have they kept themselves from women? So was that?
All right, so we're going to get to that. It's a great question. And we're going to get, how many of you are familiar with the story and have heard that David is alone? How many of you have familiar with the story and heard that David has people with him? How many are unfamiliar with the story? Okay. Gotcha. Because I grew up hearing this story, and David, let me just give you, David is about to lie. And we're going to get to that. And so because he lies, there's this, like, automatically, well, he's making a story. When you lie, what do you normally do when people ask questions, follow-up questions to your lie? What happens to the lie? It gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And so there's this tendency to read this and think none of it is true. But we're gonna break that down a little bit, and I think I'm going to change. Well, I would have changed some opinions of it if you had an opinion of it. But I'm going to set you up so nobody ever teaches you the wrong way. How's that sound? But I think David is about to lie to him, and I think he's trying to do some plausible deniability for Ahimelech, because he knows that Ahimelech can be in danger. Ahimelech knows that he could be in danger, and thus he is trembling. All right, so just realize this is a tense situation, and Ahimelech knows it. All right, verse 2, David answered Ahimelech, the priest, "The king sent me on a mission and said to me, 'No one is to know anything about the mission I am sending you on.'" So is that true or untrue? Absolutely untrue. Mm-hmm. So the lie begins. And I can almost hear him thinking, well, Saul did kind of sort of send me on a mission he doesn't want anybody to know, to flee for my life. But Saul didn't tell him that. Saul didn't send him on the mission. It's just dishonest. Okay? As for my men, well, I've told them to meet me at a certain place. Now then, what do you have on hand? Give me 5 loaves of bread or whatever you can find. So, does he have men with him? Are they going to meet in some certain place? When in a first reading of this, what would you think? I would think no. He's all by himself. Let me see, I don't want to get ahead of myself yet. I'm already getting ahead of myself. That's right. We'll keep going this way. I just got to be careful to not get too far ahead of myself. But the priest answered David, "I don't have any ordinary bread on hand. However, there is some consecrated bread here, provided the men have kept themselves from women." David replied, "Indeed, women have been kept from us, as usual, whenever I set out." Do you see the habit? The habit of David is to consecrate not only himself, but the men that go with him. To say, when we go out, yes, we go out in the name of Saul, but we're going out in the name of the Lord. And we want the Lord's guidance. And so he's like, yes, almost, we do this, Ahimelech. It's not my first time here. And so he says, the men's bodies are holy, even on missions that are not holy. There's a little element of truth in this statement. He's saying this is an unholy mission we're on because the king wants us dead, is what he's thinking. He said, even in this mission, when we're doing something that is an unholy mission, but we obey Saul. Saul says, go do this. We go and prepare ourselves to be holy when we go. It would be an interesting verse for this weekend, Hannah.
Mm-hmm. I was thinking the same.
Yeah, they've asked me to speak on the topic of holiness, what it is, how to get it, all kinds of stuff. It's going to be great. And he says, how much more so today? So the priest gave him the consecrated bread, since there was no bread there except the bread of the presence that had been removed from before the Lord and replaced by hot bread on the day it was taken away. I will explain that in a moment. This is where I'm slightly ahead of myself, not too much. I'm going to come back to those verses, but I want to read verse 7. Now one of Saul's servants was there that day. What luck, huh? Detained before the Lord. He was Doeg the Edomite, Saul's chief shepherd. Chief. Do you know what shepherds were viewed like? What's their status? The bottom rung, but he's the chief of the bottom rung. All right, and that's going to be important for next week. I want to talk much about that now. But look at verse 9. The priest replied, the sword of Goliath the Philistine, whom you killed in the valley of Elah, is here. It is wrapped in a cloth behind the ephod. If you want to take it, there is no sword here but that one. David said, there's none like it. Give it to me. So who sees this happening? Doeg. And in chapter 22, look at 22:9. That's the one I meant to read, not 21:9. My bad. 22:9, next week's lesson. But Doeg the Edomite, who was standing with Saul's officials, said, I saw the son of Jesse come to Ahimelech, son of Ahitub, at Nob. So he's stepping up to say, I saw David. All right, look down in chapter 22 now, verse 22. Almost the last verse. Then David said to Abiathar, the day when Doeg the Edomite was there, I knew he would be sure to tell Saul. And so I'm responsible for what happened. All right, so we'll get to what happened. Guess when?
Next week.
You got it. Or the week after if I don't finish this one. That's my dad for you. All right. So you see why that helps you understand the setting, what David is dealing with when they're there. All right. So David's trying to communicate these things. Let's talk about David's lie now for a minute. I want to back up and talk about that lie. He starts off with a lie. Why did he lie? The simple answer is fear. When we get afraid, when David gets afraid, he was afraid that if he told Ahimelech the truth in front of Doeg, that he might not get the help that he needs. And so he took matters into his own hands. It reminds me, keep your finger here and go to the book of Isaiah. Isaiah 57. And verse 11. Whom have you so dreaded and feared that you have not been true to me? You already see the connection between being honest and fear? And have neither remembered me nor taken this to heart. Is it not because I have long been silent that you do not fear me? I will expose your righteousness and your works, and they will not benefit you. When you cry out for help, let your collection of idols save you. Ooh, what's the problem? Idolatry. And I don't want to get too far into it, but the point is, we have a tendency when we fear something not going the way we want, even though we know God is there, we have a tendency to not be straight with God and to look for other things, other ways to do what we wish God would do for us. We may not call them idols, but what are we doing? God's not going to do it for us. I'm going to try this, or this to make it happen for me. See? And so that's what David is doing. He's in fear. He's afraid that if he was straight with what was going to happen, that he may not get what he believes he needs. So this is where I think it's easy to continue to read that the lie is building, but I think he started with the lie, but then started dropping in as much truth as he could as he's going. First of all, how many loaves did he ask for? 5. Why would he ask for 5 if he were alone and needed it? There's probably a good chance he just said, can you give me a loaf of bread? Unless he's like planning ahead for the next week, starting with, we'll see here in a minute, well, I'll tell you now, with week-old bread. So let me explain the bread. It's consecrated bread. And rather than take all the time to look up the verses, let me just tell you, they had to take 12 loaves of bread and put it on the table of showbread, hot and fresh, on the Sabbath day. It stayed on that table 7 days as a representation, a reminder of God's fellowship with them. On the Sabbath day, 12 new fresh loaves go to the table, and the 12 come off, the cold bread comes off, and that is consecrated not to God now, but to the priests as their food. And the law is done that way to make sure that the priests are taken care of. It is a law of compassion, not a law of restriction. It is not a law to say nobody else can have it. It's a law to say nobody else gets it because it's meant for the priests. Okay? This is really important. So when he asks for 5 loaves, he's saying, I need half the bread that just came off the table. Almost half. That would be a big request at that time if he were not trying to feed some other people. Does that make sense so far? Yes. Another thought that came to mind is in chapter 22, verse 1, next week's lesson. It says, David left Gath and escaped to the cave of Adullam, where his brothers and his father's household heard about it. They went down to him there. Somebody had to tell David's family that he was there. And so it would, not make sense to me when David's fleeing for his life from the king of the country, that it just happened to flow to everybody and his family found out about it. It's more likely somebody said, I'm going to go make sure your family finds out. And so that would lead me to believe that David had some people with him. Well, how about this? Let's go to Matthew. What does the book of Matthew have to do with this story? Matthew chapter 12. I think you all are going to like this. Hey, you like this, don't you? All right, so verse 1. At that time, Jesus went through the grain fields on the Sabbath day. His disciples were hungry and began to pick some heads of grain and eat them. When the Pharisees saw this, they said to him, look, your disciples are doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath. All right, unlawful by whose law? Theirs, but not unlawful by God's law. In fact, they claim that, what did I write them down? There's like 4 different laws. They said they're reaping, threshing, winnowing, and harvesting or something like that. They're breaking 4 laws. You can't do that on the Sabbath day. All right? And they're just trying to catch Jesus. Well, look at Jesus' response in verse 3. He answered, haven't you read? Which I guess he would have asked if he was here tonight. Haven't you read what David did when he and his companions were hungry? When who? David and his companions did when they were hungry. He entered the house of God, and he and his companions ate the consecrated bread, which is not lawful for them to do, but only for the priests. And then it goes on and talks about some other laws like that. So isn't it interesting that Jesus brings up this Old Testament story? And I look, there's not another time that it's talked about. There's not a different time with David and his companions that ate the consecrated bread or the showbread. This is it. It's coming from 1 Samuel 21. So how did Jesus read David's remarks about the men waiting somewhere?
They were waiting.
That they were waiting somewhere and they ate the showbread.
I just think, I guess when you were asked earlier, I'd always assumed he had people with him because as you continue to read the story, it constantly talks about David and his men and the following, and it just continues to grow.
Well, that's because in the next chapter, he ends up with 400 men following him. But that's next week's lesson.
So I'm just
But
thinking,
yes.
but it's always talked about like David, that he had men. So I guess in all.
He always did, and you always picture it.
So that's why I didn't think.
But did you picture like when he's out in the field with Jonathan and they shoot the arrow and he's hiding behind the rock and Jonathan says, no, Dad does. And they run out with nobody looking and they hug and they say, let's confirm our covenant and then I'm going to go home to the palace and you flee for your life. I never pictured him going back and getting a group of men to follow him.
Do you think maybe while he was waiting for the response, he went and made plans? Like, if this happens, will you leave with me so I have people with me?
Well,
That would make sense.
it would make sense. I think he probably did something like that. I think there are parts of the story that aren't here. And so it is interesting for me to try to figure out how do I think he did it? But the point that I want to make is so many times we picture him running off by himself and we just assume he's by himself until he starts gathering his men next week's lesson. But there's more to it than that. I think he had, and I'm going to go on a limb here. How many men do you think he had with him?
4?
I'm going to guess 4, because he had asked for 5 loaves of bread, one for him.
Would one loaf be just one person?
Now,
Man, probably. Just bread, probably.
so anyway, that's just that part of the story. All right.
That's why I said, well, because Brett said too that he said he had an appointment to meet at such and such a place, so that makes me think that maybe at that why in the waiting, he went and been like, if this happens and I have to flee, will you meet me?
Yeah, and that's what I'm saying is if you just read this for the first time and you see he lies at the beginning, people assume the rest of this is a lie. And I'm saying he lied, but I think he came back to the truth. That's just my opinion. I could be wrong, but it seems to me that nothing else that David says here is proven to be a lie. Does that make sense? Yes, Jeff?
This is kind of westernizes it, but I think they were on horses. It sounds like he was just running for his life, but there were horses. He might have went back to the stable and a couple of the guys said, what's going on?
Wouldn't surprise me a bit.
We're gonna run.
Listen, David was probably one of the most recognizable and probably the most loved person in Israel at that time. And so I think it probably wouldn't have been hard for him to, like, what's going on? He's trying to kill me. Jonathan's confirmed it. I got to get out of here. I'm coming too.
Regardless of what happened, Jesus looks at it as a positive thing.
Exactly.
He used it to defend
To defend what he's doing. Yeah, so if Jesus looks at it and says, hey, we're just following David's example of this event, then I'm not going to criticize him too much, right? And, but still, I'm going to say it again because you hear it all the time. How do you understand the New Testament without understanding these Old Testament stories? You can't. You gotta have it all. All right. So Jesus. So let's see. Let me go on with this story in Matthew just for a moment because of what, and I already turned away from it too. Some of you went, like, don't worry, I'm going to myself. Matthew 12. I want to keep reading. No, I want to back up and show you what he's. Just keep reading. Verse 5. I'm going to keep going. Because I think that he uses this story that we're studying tonight to prove a point. And I don't want to misunderstand that point, because I heard so many applications from 1 Samuel that just, and even some of the other preachers that went to Matthew, that just kind of, yeah. Let me give you a good thought. Or haven't you read in the law that the priests on the Sabbath day in the temple desecrate the Sabbath and yet are innocent? What's that talking about? They're still working. Like, I take this personally. Sunday's a day of rest on the Lord's day, and it's Sundays wear me out. In a good way. I love what I'm doing, but I get what he's saying. So, look, who's working most on the Sabbath? All you priests telling everybody else not to work. Like, stop and think about it is what he's saying. I tell you that something greater than the temple is here. If you had known what these words mean, I desire mercy, not sacrifice, you would not have condemned the innocent. So they are condemning Jesus and the disciples, and he's saying if you really understood the law and what it was meant for, then you would not have declared the innocent to be guilty.
Don't you think Jesus has an awful lot of chutzpah to say to the priest, haven't you read?
I know. I love that.
Haven't you read in the law? Kind of
Like, you lawyers, don't you know your own book? You studied it and wrote all your new laws from it. Like, let's go back to it. And so I think that there's something there. What I don't like is a lot of what has come out of that study from some pastors that I listen to is a basic relativism that says, here's the law, God wants you to do certain things, but hey, if it's not convenient or there's something better for you, then do what's better for you. And I have a problem with that. Because what is better is Jesus. He says, I am greater than the law and I'm right in front of you. So and David is a type, an illustration of Christ in so many ways. And so there's some things where the priest had the right to say, but the greater thing here to accomplish God's will is that we give of the bread that was given to us to David and his men. David did not ask for the hot bread on the table that was consecrated to God. The law is that stays there. David didn't ask for that. David asked the priest for the bread that was now not consecrated to God anymore, but was consecrated to the priests. And the priests felt like, but this guy has an important position than us in this. Let's give it to him. So I don't see relativism in this passage. Does that make sense? And
David didn't demand it either.
correct. He requested it.
And he said, or whatever you can find.
Correct. All right, let's talk about the sword now. And this is going to be really interesting because David gets what sword? We already read it. What sword does he get? Goliath's sword. And what's about to be really interesting in chapter 21, we do get to talk about it this week, is verse 10. That day David fled from Saul and went to Achish, king of Gath. Where does that city come familiar? Where does that ring a bell? Goliath of Gath. So can you imagine David, the slayer of Goliath,
With
taking Goliath's sword and going to Gath? Is he going to be loved and appreciated there? Don't think so, Jeff.
They killed him with that sword.
And it's exactly. Now look hard, Goliath's blood's still on there. You know what I'm saying? Like this is.
They'd fear him. They would fear him.
They should fear him, but he is in a small group. And again, David lied because of fear. We're going to see that David, I think, is still fearful, and so he pulls a new deception. But before we get to that, still back in verses 8 and 9, where was the sword? In the tabernacle. You know, and I just find this interesting because what do they do now in a lot of religious buildings? They have artifacts that people can come and see, and and it almost makes me think that the tabernacle had some, I hate to use the word museum effects, but when the worshipers would come to worship, they also, this one had the,
Is there any importance that it was wrapped in a cloth behind the song?
I was about to get to that, but at the same time, there's just like, but this thing's hidden away. So why is it hidden away? Maybe because they're so close to Gath. I could see the people wanting to get that sword back. And I only bring that up, it doesn't make a big point of the story, I only bring it up to say, it's mentioned here in the story, so we know it happened, and I think it helps us put the story into real life, to stop and think about what it'd be like to have that sword so close to Gath, you hide it away, David comes out and says, I need a sword. The only one you got is, maybe you remember this one? He's like, I remember that sword. When David held the sword in his hand for the second time here, first time was when? When he killed Goliath. Now he's holding the sword for a second time. What should that do to his emotional, spiritual condition? It should be encouraging. What a reminder. I didn't kill Goliath with this. God killed Goliath with this. You know what I'm saying? Like this reminds me of where it all began. And God was with me. I did not, here's our word, fear Goliath. He had courage back then, but now he has fear. All right, now you're going to see this come and go. What does he do when he fears getting caught with Bathsheba? Yep. Deception, deception, deception. And so we're going to see this as a thread that weaves through his life. Does that make him a bad person? What does God say about David? A man after his own heart. But it still shows his weaknesses. Okay?
Which also makes it so much more relatable, and it's like, when you see how God adored him, and you see all of his things that he dealt with, it gives you hope.
It does.
Okay, he can still love me.
I agree with you 100%. All right, so let's look at verse 10 now. Here we go. This is Welcome to David, part 2. If you haven't read this before, you're going to love this. That day David fled from Saul, went to Achish, king of Gath. But the servants of Achish said to him, isn't this David, the king of the land? All right, now, Dad said somebody said they would fear him. All right, so would they fear him? This is kind of like, isn't he because did they think he was king over Israel?
Yeah.
I don't think, did they know who Saul was? They didn't say he's king over Israel. He's king over the land. I think they know Saul is king, but it's like, but who really rules? All the territory.
David had led the armies against them,
Yeah. So they saw him as, isn't this the boss? Basically is what they're saying. Like, isn't he the one they sing about in their dances? Saul has slain his thousands. So did they know about Saul?
Yes.
Yes, they did. They knew Saul, the king, had slain his thousands, but David, the king of the land, had killed his tens of thousands.
And who are the thousands and the tens of thousands?
They're
Them.
them. Exactly. David took these words to heart and was very much, what's our word? Afraid. He's got fear again. So he's afraid of Achish, king of Gath, but the king knows he's there. Everybody knows he's there. And so he's got to minimize their fear so they don't come and attack him. So he pretended to be insane in their presence.
What?
Yeah, and while he was in their hands, so they captured him. It says he acted like a madman, making marks on the doors of the gates and letting saliva run down his beard. I'm crazy. Get me out. You know, and he keeps this up so that Achish just says, look, enough of you guys are crazy. I don't need a new madman. Now watch this. I'm serious. Achish said to his servants, look at this man. He's insane. Why bring him to me? Am I short of madmen? Like, what an insult to everybody standing there. Look around. I have enough crazy people. Talking about me? You know? And it's just, and he's just like all wrapped up with, you know, this guy's crazy. Get him out of here. To take a trophy like that and cut him loose, all I can say is David was convincing.
Good actor, wasn't he?
Yeah. Was it genius or is it fear? I don't know. A little bit of both.
And then you gotta wonder, like, did God have Achish kind of like give him favor to spare David's life?
All right, so I'm going to reserve an answer to that because I haven't figured it out yet, because it seems like Achish is a bit crazy himself, because later David comes back and Achish accepts him, and then while living under the protection of Achish, he's defeating more Philistines. But telling Achish, don't worry, I'm going out on a raid party against Judah. Oh, okay, good. And then he goes and kills his own people. And Achish lets it happen. Other people trying to tell Achish. He's like, no, I trust David. So like, David is the madman, but Achish is just as crazy. So, I'm going to reserve my judgment for the whole Achish story as it grows and continues as we read and as we study. But you're asking the right questions. You're like, what is this all about? Now, you ready for this? You're going to have a heart attack. It's 9 minutes till.
Whoa.
And I told you I was going to get done early today. You didn't believe me.
I didn't.
I'm finishing 9 minutes early. I reclaim it next week if I need it.
Okay, well, I got something for you,
Okay, go.
because it's, you know, Pastor Christian. And I didn't get it Sunday, but I didn't come until today.
Well, bless you. Thank you. Oh, that is so sweet.
Everyone in this church, I can't tell you.
Oh, that is showbread. If it was consecrated bread, I'll share it with all of David's mighty men. The crazy ones.
Crap, it was when I was like rushing when I got home tonight.
All right.
Oh, cute.
All right. Somebody got me one last year that said Sermonator on it. I love that. I belong to a rare breed of pastors who still preach from the Bible. The care for the congregations, pray for the sick and needy, desire to reach the lost and broken of this world. Amen. And then this one. Ooh, I like this one. Didn't he? Is it orange or red? This pastor has an awesome congregation. I should wear this one on Sunday. You know, I could wear like this shirt with old buttons and go, whoa! Yeah.
Since you got done early, I do have a question for you.
Yes, go ahead.
What do you think it means?
Uh-oh.
Whenever on verse 7 in here, where it says that
Of 21?
the servant of Saul. that was-
Okay, detained before the Lord?
Yes.
Okay, that was, I spent probably 2 hours on studying that. And the word detained there is much stronger in the English than it is in the original language. I know this because I verified this with our resident. After studying it for a while, this is about a 45-minute conversation we had on the phone yesterday? 2 days ago, whatever. And so, detained before the Lord is a phrase that was used, and it really means like caught in the presence, standing in the presence, and with some purpose behind it. It doesn't mean detained, like when we think of detained, there's something else that forces us to stay there. We're detained, you know, and it doesn't mean that. It'd mean like he could be detained there because Saul told him to go keep an eye on Ahimelech. So he's detained before the Lord, but he's told to be there detained by Saul.
So it wasn't that God had him there.
No, it wasn't. I'm not going to say it wasn't, because it could also be that he was detained there by the Lord, that the Lord is the one who did the detaining. How do I explain this? Because even though it's detained by the Lord, doesn't mean that the Lord did the detaining. It's detained by the presence of the Lord. So the priests, when they would, where is so-and-so today? Oh, he's detained of the Lord. He's doing his duty in the presence of God. That's where he's holding himself. So it has to do with even in the presence. Oh, I'm going down to the tabernacle where I'm going to be detained by the presence of the Lord. You know, detained by the Lord, I'm there to fulfill my duty. It could be, it's a very simple,
Can I just
yes.
a little bit, and this might step on what you're going to talk about next week, but being the chief shepherd, that would mean that he would be the one who is in charge of the flock and choosing which lambs would be sent to the temple because they were qualified. And so it may have been part of his duty to go, before he made that decision, to go offer sacrifices at the tabernacle so that he would be clean to be qualified to choose. Socks?
Wait, no. What's it say?
Nacho average pastor. That's awesome. I do appreciate that. Thank you. So does that
Oh, yeah.
help? Yeah. But
Actually, saying that makes more sense. I didn't think about the whole shepherd and him being there because he might have been, or it could have been that he even had brought the sacrifices.
yeah. I'm gonna say this and then hold this for next week. But I think he was there to find any way to succeed, to find graces with Saul, because he wants to be successful and rich. He's coming from the bottom, worked his way up to the chief of the bottom, and his desire is to be more than that. And that's going to get him in trouble. Okay? That's next week. We're still early.
Still early and we have, anybody have more questions?
No, I'm always up for questions. All right, let's pray. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this day and for the study. I pray that you continue to help us learn things and then apply it to our lives, to walk away with the principles that we're learning, to live them daily. In Jesus' name, amen.